Tonight, we drift further into the strange world of medieval punishments, into the hushed streets of towns where the air is still and the echoes of voices seem to linger longer than they should. This is episode 2 of the worst medieval punishments of all time. In our last episode, we stood before the pillory, a wooden frame where wrongdoers endured the gaze and jeers of the crowd. But this punishment was a different sort of cruelty, not a place to stand, but a thing to wear, not designed to harm the body directly, but to stifle the voice, the breath, and the will. Before you settle in, if you enjoy these tales, consider liking the video and drop a comment below. Where are you listening from? And what's the time where you are? It's always fascinating to see who's joining us across the globe. Now, find a comfortable position. Perhaps dim your screen and let your shoulders relax. And together, let us wander back in time. Picture a small town, maybe somewhere in England during the late Middle Ages. The ground is cobbled but uneven, stones smoothed by countless footsteps. In these narrow lanes, a spoken word could travel far, sometimes too far, not by letter or printed word, but by mouth. The baker's wife speaking to the brewer's daughter, the cooper telling the innkeeper. And sometimes these words are not kind, and that was reason enough to be punished. The word scold was often used for a woman who was outspoken, argumentative, or accused of gossiping. In a time when quiet compliance was expected, a loud voice, a sharp tongue, or too many opinions could be seen as a threat to the harmony of the household or the peace of the town. Their punishment? The scold's bridle. It sounds almost quaint, doesn't it? Like something you might use to guide a stubborn horse. But in truth, this was no tool for animals. It was for people. And not just any people, mostly women, accused of having tongues that wagged too much. The scold's bridle, sometimes called the brank, was an invention of iron. Imagine a framework shaped to fit over the head, like a helmet stripped of all comfort. Bands of metal would encircle the skull, crossing at the back, sometimes locked with a padlock so it could not be removed. But the most notorious part was the piece that went inside the mouth, a flat plate, sometimes spiked, that pressed down on the tongue. It was not always meant to wound, though in many cases it could. Its purpose was humiliation and the removal of speech itself. To wear the bridle was to be paraded through the town, the clanging of the iron announcing your presence before your footsteps did. Some bridles even had bells attached for this very reason, so all could hear the approach of the silenced one. A woman fitted with the scold's bridle would often be led by a rope or chain, walking slowly through the marketplace, past familiar faces, neighbors, tradespeople, perhaps even friends, each of whom would understand the message being delivered. It was not simply about the one wearing it. It was about reminding everyone else what could happen if their words were deemed too sharp. Sometimes the bridle was worn for only an hour or two, sometimes for longer. In certain cases, the offender might be chained to the market cross, standing in place for the duration, forced to endure the stares and whispered remarks of passers-by, the very thing she had been accused of doing herself. If you try to imagine it, the feel of cold iron against the skin, the awkward pressure on the jaw, the inability to speak. You might also think of the way sound disappears when you cannot move your tongue freely. The world becomes oddly quiet. The people around you talk, but you cannot join in. There is a loneliness in enforced silence. And for the wearer of the Scold's bridle, this loneliness was sharpened by shame. For many, the punishment was far worse than any fine or short imprisonment, because it targeted not just the body, but the dignity of the person. The Scold's bridle was not used everywhere, but records of it appear in various parts of Europe. In Scotland, the device was often employed in cases brought before the church court for what was deemed moral or verbal misconduct. In some towns, the bridles were kept in public buildings, ready for use when the need arose. In England, similar devices appeared as early as the 16th century, continuing into the 18th century in some rural areas. And, though they are now displayed in museums, the stories attached to them still feel close enough to touch. Eventually, the punishment would end. The lock would be opened, the iron lifted away. But the silence it imposed did not always vanish with it. A woman who had worn the bridle might find her reputation permanently altered, her voice more carefully measured, her words chosen with greater caution, not out of wisdom, but out of fear. The device had done its work, not just for the moment, but for the years that followed. Today, the Scold's bridle exists only in collections and historical accounts, a relic of a time when control could be as simple and as cruel as a strip of iron. Yet, in looking at it, we are reminded of the enduring power of speech and the deep human instinct to resist its loss. As we leave the cobblestone streets and step quietly back into the present, the air feels lighter. We carry with us the knowledge of what was once done in the name of order, and perhaps a greater appreciation for the voices we are free to use. And while the Scold's bridle silenced the tongue, next time we meet, we'll see how blasphemy could literally silence one forever.